Hello, my name is Matthew, and Steve Donahue and I have been reading Dune in the month of October. And this past week we read part three. It's entitled The Prophet, and it's also the end of the book. A terrific conclusion. I remember the last time that I read this, at the end of when I put the book down, I thought it was okay. There was a lot of things that confused me. It's this big world with a lot of characters, a lot of world building, and I thought, well, that was enjoyable. Knowing that there's a whole series of these books, and I felt satisfied with what I had read. Reading it again, getting to the end of part three, I had a totally different experience. Now I'm really interested in reading at least the sequel, and possibly a whole bunch of these other Dune Frank Herbert books. I think the next one's Dune Messiah. I'd have to look. But Paul's story is just incredible. The growth, the development. He's a completely different person. He changes in each section. He's a totally different person at the end of part one, as he was when we met him in the beginning. He's a different person at the end of part two than he was at the beginning, and the same thing with part three. He's now a religious figure, a leader of the Fremen. There's a time jump in from part two to part three, and his mother, Lady Jessica, and Duke have spent a long time now with the Fremen, with the desert people, and they've become ingrained into their culture. They're a part of the world of Dune. They're no longer outsiders. Paul sees himself as one of these people. And there's several interactions throughout part two and three that really show how convincing Paul Atreides is, how commanding he is, formidable, clever, and intelligent. He's a persuasive person in this world. The way that he thinks on his feet and just persuades the people around him to see that he's a real leader. He has that ring from his father, the signet ring. Hardly even needs it. Just the way that he holds himself, carries himself, and the examples that we get through the book, it's just really amazing. At this point, he's been there for years. He has Shani, and they have a child together. Lady Jessica had the baby, that creepy baby that is freaking everybody out. It's the baby's born and has all of the knowledge and experiences, from what I understand, of all the generations of the Ben Jesuit, because Lady Jessica took the holy water drink while she was with child, and it passed through, and the fetus had this holy water, and it just was transformative. The baby's often referred to as an abomination because the baby speaks in full sentences, complicated thoughts, has ideas and knowledge of things that just should not know. And there's so much exciting adventure throughout this story. There's one moment that I had recently watched David Lynch Dune adaptation from the 80s, I think 1984, 83. And the movie did it slightly ruin or spoil a part of the book just because the visuals that I had seen made it seem silly. And so, though there are these monstrous, terrifying worms that live in the deserts of Dune, and they are gigantic. They swallow these giant drill rigs, like whole factories. They'll swallow them whole, and any sense of motion sets off these worms, and they just go on the trail. And so there's a rite being performed where Paul Muad'Dib is going to ride one of these worms. And I just couldn't get the image from the David Lynch movie where they had these like Jim Henson worms, and they're just sort of riding the worms as if they're on top of a carriage, and it's really silly. They look like garden worms or like Muppets or something. But in any event, Duke Leto has several of these rights, and he's becoming the real leader of the Fremen people. And early on in the book, the second part of the book, when Duke Leto had to have a fight to the death, and it was the first time he had killed someone in battle. I remember reading that and just thinking, it doesn't really make sense. Or for this culture, the Fremen culture, doesn't seem like it should be this primitive, having fights to the death. And so, is it Gurney, or really terrible with the names, but the leader of the Fremen people recognizes that Duke is a prophet. He's a religious leader for the Fremen, and he needs to be the leader of the people, the military commander, and things like that. And there needs to be a fight to the death. And it reminded me of the Orestra plays. It's Orestra, and then the Libation Bearers, and then Eumenides, the three plays by Aeschylus. Had really similar tones with this idea of retribution, eye for an eye, leading up to Eumenides, where they need to have established rule of law. And the Fremen are gearing up for a battle, a war, and Paul Atreides has this magnificent speech episode where he is essentially convincing the population that we need to stop killing our best men. And he convinces them. He says that, this person, my right-hand man, we're not going to waste killing each other. We need to have our goals focused. It's an incredible scene. There's a few moments like that. They're just really powerful. I was thinking about the new movie and thinking there's portions of the movie. I've heard rumors that the movie might only be part one. After reading part two, I thought, well, it'll probably start at part two and have part one as these flashbacks. Part three, I've been saying that Paul Atreides has become this religious figure, this prophet, and he's having visions, and they're hallucinatory and disorienting. You can see these visions are not out of control, but they are kind of washing over him, and he's seeing the past and the future and the present all kind of mixed up in these visions. And it made me think that the movie might make use of the visions of Paul Atreides and use that as a narrative device. So we'll have flashbacks and flash forwards, and it might be a way to wrangle in this whole huge narrative. Some of my favorite parts of the novel were Baron Harkonnen. He's such a character. He's so evil. He's villainous. I love that all of these characters, almost every character in the book, has these plots and schemes. Paul Atreides has his schemes and plots, and Baron Harkonnen has schemes and plots, and there's the Emperor that has plots, and we learn a lot more about. There's the Sardaukar, which are the it's like formidable soldier unit that the Emperor has at his command, and from what I understand, they come from this prison planet, and Baron Harkonnen has this idea of turning Dune into a prison planet. That way he can use the prisoners to mine the spice, but there's like a dark, mysterious reasons that the Sardaukar are so formidable, things like that. It also is supposed to explain the harsh conditions of Dune, is why the Fremen are such incredible warriors. And Baron Harkonnen sends his son or his nephew, sends someone off to this factory, and he kind of closes him off out of the loop, and it's going to be this catastrophic failure. And then for some reason, the Emperor is going to see this, but realize that it's not Baron Harkonnen's fault. And it's a whole convoluted scheme, which I didn't quite understand. And it's this Mentat who is hyper intelligent, hyper logical, kind of reminded me of a Vulcan in the way that, or like a Sherlock Holmes level of deduction skills. And they come up with this plot, and you can practically see them swirling their mustaches. The whole thing blows up in their faces. At some point, the Emperor comes down, and there's a confrontation between Baron Harkonnen and the Emperor. And it's maybe my favorite moment in the David Lynch movie, which is in the David Lynch movie, Baron Harkonnen is just this ridiculous figure. In the novel, we hear that he has these suspensors because he's so obese. He needs to have these devices to allow him to move around. He can't even carry his own weight. And in the movie, it's represented as if he's a real life Macy's Day Parade balloon, where he wears one of those inflatables and then floats around these rooms. And it's just absurd. But the Emperor calls him in and goes, bring in that fat floating man. It's really funny, and I don't think it's supposed to be intentional. There's a clash coming. So Baron Harkonnen has all these plots and schemes, and he's hearing about Muad Dib, and he already is looking down the road, and Paul Atreides and the Fremen are just gathering up forces, and it's just this amazing climax when the big fight breaks out. There's going to be a reveal that Paul Atreides is still alive. We hear that there was just this big battle that has consequences. Families are separated, people are separated. Paul loses his son. It's just devastating. The Lady Jessica's young daughter, that freaky little baby, allows herself to be captured, and she's also superpowered. Paul and Lady Jessica and the freaky baby. I think the baby's name is Aria, I believe, or just like they have superpowers. That they can read people's minds, and they can get into people's minds, and they can use voices that can command people, and it's all this stuff. Paul is not necessarily at the end of the novel. He's not just shown to be the absolute virtuous hero. There's a dark side to Paul, and just as the harsh life that he's led, and the series of tragedies, losing his father, losing the kingdom, losing a son. But in any event, Arya, the baby, has this amazing interaction with the Emperor, Baron Harkonnen there, and the Emperor has his own Bene Gesserit, and there's these guildsmen people, and the whole army, and this little baby is just so freaky and creepy and astute. It's just showing the Emperor that she's not playing around, and that everybody there needs to take her seriously. And then there's the reveal that Paul is still alive, and it just is such a great moment. The baby Arya kills Baron Harkonnen. The Fremen people and Paul are using their knowledge of the world that they live in. They know how to wrangle these worms. Paul at some point drinks the holy water, which is supposed to kill him. He goes into a coma for like 3 weeks or something, but he comes out of it and he has even more extra superpowers. And there's a giant dust storm coming to the fortress or the city where the Harkonnens are fortified. And they're just using their knowledge of the harsh conditions and their weather patterns, and their ability to utilize the worms on this planet, use it to their advantage, and create situations that the Harkonnens' shields go down, and all the glass shatters, and the worms break in, and it's really great, adventurous, exciting action scenes. And Paul Atreides has just an incredible. He has so many great speeches through and interactions. The conversations are really well done as examples of his character, and just instead of just being told how persuasive he is, you can read it. You can read the dialogue. It's incredible. And there's these guilds people, and the Emperor, who has he's like ruling the whole galaxy, and it's just this game of chess with two people talking. Who's holding the high cards? And the Emperor says, because I can't remember the name, but the Royal House Atreides came from that water planet. And the Emperor says, I'm going to send ships over to that water planet and just blow it up. And Paul says he'll destroy all of the spice, and there's these guilds people who can also see the future, and they realize that it's true. And so the power exchange between the two is just amazing. And it felt like a really satisfying retribution story, a satisfying revenge story. And then there's the knife fight. And I didn't like it the first time I read the book. And I still didn't like it. I thought it didn't make any sense on several different levels. It's the Baron Harkonnen's nephew. It's somebody. But Paul is like a superhero at this point. And this other person shows up, and now everyone's worried. Can Paul take this person? Paul, meanwhile, had that great speech about how we need to get above this barbarism, and he couldn't come up. He couldn't sidestep the whole situation. In fact, he wanted to have this night fight, and I just don't think it matches his character. He should have been able to beat him easily instead of this ridiculous situation, an unbelievable kind of knife fight where people are just circling, holding their knives. It's really silly and unrealistic. And it seemed to just trivialize so much because it comes down to like hand-to-hand combat, but it's an extremely small defect, in my opinion, of the book. I thought it had a great ending right up to that point, and the dark sides of Paul Atreides, because they're back into this fortified city, and Paul's asking like damage reports, and buildings are practically blown up. There's rubble in the streets, and Paul says something to the effect of, "Well, we can rebuild all of this." And someone else there just kind of makes the comparison to his father, and says like Paul's not even mentioning the casualties. Duke Leto Atreides, the father, he has that great moment at the beginning of the book where he's saving the Fremen and disregarding the objects, the drill rigs, the spice, the people are more important. And then we have this really dark moment where Paul at the very end doesn't mention anything about the people, and just talks about how they can rebuild things. Also, Paul. His father had Lady Jessica as this concubine. And awfully convenient that the emperor has like this beautiful niece who I think is like also a Bene Jesuit and also has royalty, and there's a really good reason why Paul should marry her, and they're gonna become even more powerful and even more royal. He's explaining this to the girl, to the mother of their very recently dead son. He's explaining why this is all going to work out, and I'm not so sure about that part. I thought I was a little disappointed. At the end, you feel a little disappointed with some of Paul's behavior. But those are my thoughts. The book is action-packed. The third part is action-packed. It has so much stuff going on. I can't remember a lot of it. There's a lot of characters' names that are really strange, unfamiliar, and as I was reading it, I could follow along, but I don't know the characters enough to talk about specific character interactions. But it's just full of them. Is it Guernsey? The guy that comes back and finds out that Paul's alive. The whole time he thinks Lady Jessica is the one that betrayed him, and he gets her alone. He has a knife up to her throat, and Paul comes in and has to break it up and set him straight. It's amazing. Um, Next week we're reading the appendices, which I didn't read last time, and it looks like there's four of them: the ecology of Dune, the religion of Dune, report on Ben Jesuit motives and purposes, um, and selected excerpts of the noble houses. So I'm looking forward to that. It's been a great time. I'm looking forward to hearing what Steve has to say. I'm also looking forward to watching the movie. I know Steve's going to make a movie review. Maybe I'll make a movie review, depending. But those are some of my thoughts. My general impression was that I really enjoyed it so much more the second time around. Just terrific. And I can't wait to see the movie. So let me know if you have any thoughts about anything I had to say. Leave a comment if you would like. Thank you for watching, and take care.